The rain had been falling since early morning, soft and steady, turning the small Vermont town into a blur of gray and green. It was one of those quiet Saturdays when time seemed to move slower, when most people preferred to stay home with a cup of tea and a blanket. But not for Emily Carter. Rainy days were her favorite time to go thrifting. She always believed the best finds appeared when no one else was looking. Emily pulled her hood tighter as she crossed the street toward the thrift store. The hand-painted sign above the door read Second Chances, letters fading but friendly. The little bell above the entrance jingled when she stepped inside, announcing her arrival. The familiar scent of old wood, dust, and something faintly floral greeted her. The warmth inside felt like stepping into another world, one filled with forgotten stories and second-hand treasures, waiting to be found. She brushed a few drops of rain from her jacket and smiled at the older woman behind the counter. "Morning, Mrs. Doyle," she said cheerfully. "Morning, dear. Out treasure hunting again, I see," the woman replied, her voice carrying the easy warmth of someone who had seen generations of shoppers pass through her door. Emily laughed lightly. "You know me. I can't stay away." Mrs. Doyle chuckled and went back to rearranging a stack of old books. Emily wandered down one of the narrow aisles, her fingers brushing over shelves filled with mismatched mugs, chipped teapots, and faded figurines. She loved this part, the search, the uncertainty, the feeling that something wonderful might be hiding just around the corner. Most of the time she didn't find anything special. But that never bothered her. It wasn't about the money or the value. For Emily, it was about the charm of it all. Every object had a past, a story, and she liked to imagine where it came from. She stopped at a small display of picture frames. Some still held old photographs, strangers smiling in sepia tones, wedding portraits, a child holding a puppy. Emily's gaze lingered for a moment. She always wondered who they were, what happened to them, and how their memories ended up in a thrift shop. Then something caught her eye. Behind a few stacked frames was a larger painting, half hidden in gathering dust. She carefully pulled it out. It was an oil painting of a landscape, a meadow stretching toward a line of trees beneath a soft golden sky. The colors were gentle and worn, almost dreamlike. It wasn't perfect. The frame was scratched and there was a small tear near the corner, but something about it drew her in. She tilted it toward the light. The brushwork looked delicate, thoughtful. It had a quiet beauty that made her pause. She turned it over to check the price. A small white tag read $7.50. Emily smiled. "Well," she murmured to herself, "that's less than lunch." She didn't know much about art, she just knew what she liked. And she liked this painting. It felt peaceful, the kind of picture that could make a room feel warmer. She imagined it above her mantel, catching the afternoon light. She carried it to the counter, brushing a bit of dust off as she went. "Found something already?" Mrs. Doyle asked, glancing at the painting. "Yeah, I think this one needs a new home," Emily said. Mrs. Doyle nodded approvingly. "Good eye. It's been sitting there for months. Surprised no one picked it up." Emily laughed. Their loss, I guess. After paying, she tucked the painting carefully under her arm and stepped back out into the drizzle. The rain had softened to a mist and the street glistened under the gray sky. She walked slowly, her umbrella bobbing, feeling oddly content. At home, she set the painting on her dining table and took a closer look. The frame was heavier than she expected. When she wiped it down with a damp cloth, bits of grime came off, revealing a soft gold color beneath the dirt. Up close, the brush strokes were more detailed than she'd noticed in the store. Tiny flecks of light danced across the painted meadow. It almost felt alive. She tilted it again, studying the lower right corner where the paint seemed a little darker. That's when she saw it, faint initials almost hidden beneath the edge of the frame. They looked like JW. Emily frowned slightly. She leaned closer, squinting. The letters were so small they could easily be missed. They seemed deliberate, though, painted in a careful hand. She sat back in her chair, curiosity sparking. "JW," she whispered. "Who are you?" Her laptop was on the table, still open from the night before. On impulse, she typed the initials along with a few words describing the painting. JW Landscape Painting Meadow. A handful of images appeared, some similar, some not. She clicked through them idly until one name kept popping up. Joseph Whiting. She clicked on a short article about him. According to the description, Joseph Whiting was a 19th-century American painter known for his soft landscapes and attention to natural light. Some of his works were displayed in small museums. Others had been sold at auctions for surprising amounts. Emily stared at the screen, then looked back at her painting. "No way," she muttered, half amused. It couldn't be. She'd bought it for less than $8 from a thrift store. Still, the idea made her smile. She leaned back in her chair and studied the painting again. Maybe it was just a copy, or maybe someone had signed it for fun. It didn't matter much, she loved it either way. But she couldn't shake the thought. What if just maybe it was real? The rest of the day passed quietly. Emily hung the painting above her mantel, stepping back to admire how perfectly it fit. The soft tones made her living room feel warmer, cozier. Every time she glanced at it, she felt a small spark of joy. That night, as she sat reading on the couch, her eyes kept drifting to the initials in the corner. Something about them tugged at her thoughts. She'd seen hundreds of thrift store finds, but this one felt different. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, lighting up the painting. The gold tones shimmered faintly in the morning light, and Emily found herself smiling again. She decided to take a photo of it and send it to her friend Laura, who worked part-time at a small gallery downtown. She texted, "Hey, found this painting at Second Chances yesterday. Recognize the artist? Signed JW." A few minutes later, Laura replied, "Could be nothing, but that style looks familiar. You might want to get it checked out. Better safe than sorry." Emily laughed, typing back, "What, you think I struck gold?" Laura sent a laughing emoji.
You never know.
People find all kinds of things. Remember that woman who bought a $5 painting and it turned out to be worth thousands? Emily rolled her eyes playfully but couldn't help smiling. "Yeah, sure," she said aloud to herself. "That would never happen to me." Still, her curiosity grew. She opened her laptop again, searching for more about Joseph Whiting. The deeper she looked, the more she found his style, his signature, even details about his brush technique. The resemblance was uncanny. She tilted her head, comparing an online image of one of his works to hers. The color palette, the lighting, even the composition looked similar. Her heart beat a little faster. Could it really be possible? That evening, she decided she'd take the painting to be appraised. Not because she thought it was worth a fortune, but because she wanted to know its story. She liked stories, the quiet kind hidden inside old things. As she sat there, sipping tea, she remembered the little thrift shop again. The musty smell, the hum of the old ceiling fan, Mrs. Doyle's friendly smile. She wondered how many treasures had passed through that store without anyone realizing. Maybe, just maybe, she'd found one. A week later, Emily carefully wrapped the painting in a soft blanket and placed it in her car. She wasn't expecting much, but something in her heart buzzed with quiet excitement. She didn't tell anyone else, not yet. This felt like something she wanted to experience first before sharing it with the world. The drive to the appraisal center was calm and unhurried. The sky was clear this time, the sunlight warm on her face. She parked, took a deep breath, and lifted the painting from the back seat. She glanced at it once more before walking inside. "All right," she said softly, smiling to herself. "Let's see who you really are." At that moment, Emily had no idea how much her life was about to change. She thought she had just bought a simple painting, a small deal, a bit of beauty to brighten her living room. But hidden beneath that dust and faded frame was a story waiting to be rediscovered. A story that would turn a quiet Saturday purchase into something far more valuable than she ever imagined. That night, before the appraisal, Emily placed the painting back on her wall and stood in front of it for a long time. She traced the outline of the meadow with her eyes, letting the calmness of the image wash over her. For now, it was just hers, a secret between her and a forgotten artist. Somewhere deep down, though, she sensed that she had stumbled upon something rare. Not just because of what it might be worth, but because of the way it made her feel, connected, curious, alive. She turned off the lamp, the last bit of light from the window falling softly across the golden frame. The initials glimmered faintly, as if winking at her in the dark. Emily smiled. Whatever came next, she was ready for it. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the painting. For the past few days, it had been haunting her thoughts like an unfinished puzzle. At first, she thought it was just a little curiosity. a whimsical thought that maybe, just maybe, she had stumbled across something worth more than what she had paid. But as she spent more time with the painting, it began to feel like there was more to the story. There was a weight to it now, as though the painting was quietly asking her to figure out its past. Every time Emily walked by it, her gaze lingered just a little longer. The painting, which had once seemed like an inexpensive piece to brighten up her living room, had started to feel like a secret waiting to be uncovered. She loved the softness of the colors, the gentle way the landscape seemed to stretch out forever. The brushstrokes were subtle, yet there was a certain kind of deliberate calmness to them, something that suggested the artist had known exactly what they were doing. The more she looked at it, the more she began to wonder who had painted it. Who was Joseph Whiting? The initials in the corner, which had initially seemed like an afterthought, now felt like a key. Every time she traced them with her finger, they whispered a question. Is this really who I think it is? It had been a week since Emily first brought the painting home. The initial excitement of the find had settled into something quieter but more persistent. She had done a little more digging on Joseph Whiting, but the information she found was scattered. Most of the sources online mentioned his name in passing, offering little more than a few details. That he had been a 19th-century American painter who specialized in landscapes, that his works occasionally appeared at auctions, and that he was known for his soft, almost dreamlike portrayal of the natural world. There wasn't much else, but there was something about the search that bothered Emily. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to discover, that she had missed something. The painting seemed like it could hold the key to understanding Joseph Whiting's life and legacy. And as much as Emily liked to imagine that she had simply found a nice cheap decoration, she couldn't stop feeling that she had stumbled upon something rare. After some hesitation, Emily decided to reach out to someone who might know more. She had a friend, Laura, who worked part-time at a local art gallery in town. Laura had always been the more art-savvy of their group, the one who could spot a famous artist's work at a glance and could tell the difference between a print and an original. Emily wasn't sure if Laura could offer any concrete answers, but she figured it couldn't hurt to ask. That evening, after a long day of teaching, Emily sent Laura a text message. Hey, I found an old painting at the thrift store. It's signed with J.W. Could it be Joseph Whiting? The painting looks like something from the 1800s. Any chance you know anything about him? She hesitated before sending the message, unsure if it was a silly question. What if it was just a random piece, nothing special? What if she was reading too much into it? But then again, there was a small part of her that didn't want to let go of the mystery. If there was even a chance it was an authentic Whiting, it would be too big to ignore. Laura replied almost immediately. Joseph Whiting. Huh. He's not super famous, but his work does pop up occasionally. If it's really an original, that would be something. I don't know much about him off the top of my head, but I can ask around at the gallery tomorrow and get back to you. I'd definitely get it appraised, though, just in case. Emily's heart skipped a beat at the thought of it being real, but she kept her response casual. Thanks. I'll look into it. It's probably nothing, but I thought I'd ask. As Emily set her phone down, she felt a flutter of nervous excitement. She wasn't sure why she felt so anxious about a painting. It wasn't like she had made a huge investment, but it was more about the idea that maybe, just maybe, she had found something valuable. There was a thrill in that. It was like finding a hidden treasure, even if no one else saw its worth yet. The next day, Emily went about her usual routine, trying not to let her mind wander too much to the painting. But it was impossible not to think about it. It was always there, like a quiet companion in the back of her mind, waiting for her attention. After work, Emily grabbed her coat and headed out again, this time to visit a local art appraiser she had heard about through a friend. It wasn't the fanciest place, just a small, unassuming shop tucked into a side street. But she figured it was worth a shot. Maybe they could tell her if the painting was real, or if it was just another old picture collecting dust. The doorbell above the entrance chimed softly as Emily stepped inside. The room was warm, filled with the scent of fresh wood and the musty smell of aged paintings. Several works of art were lined up on the walls, some framed and others rolled up on the floor. There was a quiet atmosphere in the air, and Emily felt like she had stepped into another time. A man stood behind a counter in the back of the room. He was older, with glasses perched on the end of his nose, and he looked up when she entered. "Can I help you?" he asked in a voice that was soft but clear. Emily approached the counter with the painting carefully cradled in her arms. "I was hoping you could take a look at this. I found it at a thrift store and I'm wondering if it's real. It's signed J.W. Could it be Joseph Whiting?" The man raised an eyebrow at the mention of Whiting's name. "Joseph Whiting, you say? Interesting. Let's take a look." He walked over and gently took the painting from her, examining it for a moment before turning it over. Emily could feel her pulse quicken. She tried to remind herself not to get too hopeful. It was just a painting after all. But still, there was something about the way the man was studying it that made her heart race. After what felt like an eternity, the man set the painting down on the counter and stepped back, his hands folded in front of him. "It's certainly an interesting piece," he said slowly. "The style, the way the light is captured in the trees and the brushwork along the horizon, it does resemble some of Whiting's work. It's possible, but I'd need to inspect it more carefully to give you a definite answer." "Do you have any documentation, any provenance on it?" Emily shook her head. "No, I don't have anything. I found it in a thrift store for about $8. He looked up at her with mild surprise. $8, huh? That's quite a steal if this is what I think it is." She felt a rush of excitement and disbelief. Was it really possible that she had found something valuable by sheer accident? The appraiser must have sensed her growing hope because he added quickly, "Don't get too excited just yet. There's still a lot to verify before we can say for sure, but I'd be happy to do a more in-depth inspection. It might take a couple of days." Emily nodded, still in awe. "Of course. I'd appreciate it." As she left the shop, the world seemed to shift just a little. The streets outside felt brighter, the sky clearer, and even the breeze felt fresher. She had come in unsure and a little nervous, but now there was a quiet excitement bubbling inside her. What if it was real? What if, in that small, dusty corner of a thrift store, she had found a hidden treasure? That night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She placed the painting back on her mantelpiece, still unsure of what would come next, but for the first time in a long while, Emily felt like something unexpected might be waiting around the corner. The following days seemed to crawl by for Emily. After leaving the art appraiser's shop, she couldn't stop thinking about the possibilities. What if the painting was real? What if it was truly the work of Joseph Whiting, a name that had started to feel more significant with each passing hour? It wasn't just about the value of the painting anymore. It was about the mystery, the excitement of finding something that could turn out to be more than what it appeared at first glance. She spent the next few days checking her email, eagerly waiting for a response. Each time her phone buzzed, she'd jump in anticipation, only to be met with another notification about the weather or a social media post. Nothing about the painting. The longer she waited, the more the anxiety built up inside her, like a slow-burning fire she couldn't put out. One afternoon, when she had almost convinced herself to stop obsessing over it, she finally received an email from the appraiser. Her heart pounded as she opened it, her fingers trembling slightly. The email was short but to the point. "I've had a chance to carefully inspect the painting. I can confirm that this is an authentic piece by Joseph Whiting. The style, the brushwork, and even the signature match the known characteristics of his work. Given the quality and rarity, this painting is worth between $30,000 and $50,000, possibly more at auction." Emily stared at the screen, her mind struggling to absorb what she was reading. The words felt like they were written for someone else, not her. She had just found a painting at a thrift store for less than $8, and now it was worth tens of thousands of dollars? It didn't seem real. It didn't seem possible. For a long moment she sat there, her breath caught in her chest. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The thought of it, the idea that something so ordinary had turned into something so valuable, was almost too overwhelming to process. The mundane reality of her life, the routine of teaching, the quiet moments at home, all felt worlds away from the art world she had just entered. The email continued, giving a bit more detail about the next steps. The appraiser suggested that Emily get the painting professionally authenticated and that she consider selling it at auction or donating it to a museum. But the more she read, the more Emily found herself torn. Part of her was eager to cash in on the painting's value. The money could change her life, allow her to pay off debts, take a vacation, or invest in something that would give her more freedom. It was tempting, so tempting. But there was another part of her, a quieter voice that wasn't so interested in the money. It had been the same part of her that had initially bought the painting, the part that had seen something special in it. The idea of selling it felt like losing something important. It wasn't just the painting. It was the connection she felt to it, the idea of holding something that had been created by someone long ago. For the next few days, Emily found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. She kept going back and forth, wondering whether to sell the painting or keep it. Part of her longed for the security that the money could bring, but another part was reluctant to let go of the story. She reached out to Laura for advice. After hearing the details of the appraisal, Laura responded with enthusiasm, encouraging Emily to think about selling the painting. "You could get a lot for it," she said. "This could be life-changing money." But when Emily asked her to consider the emotional aspect of it, to think about the painting's history and the connection she had developed with it, Laura paused. "I get it," she said slowly, "but think about it this way. If you sell it, someone else gets to enjoy it, and you get to enjoy the kind of freedom that most people only dream of. It could be a chance to start fresh." Emily wasn't sure if that made her feel better or worse. She spent another week going back and forth, still unsure of what to do. She decided to visit the appraiser again to talk things through in person, to get a sense of how much this decision might change her life. The day of the meeting, she arrived at the appraiser's shop with the painting carefully wrapped up again, as if it were something fragile and precious. The air inside the shop was just as it had been before, quiet, a little musty, and filled with the smell of old wood. The appraiser greeted her warmly, but there was an air of professionalism to his manner that made Emily even more aware of how serious the situation had become. "I've been thinking a lot about your painting," the appraiser said as he unwrapped it. "I want to make sure you understand just how rare this piece is. Whiting's works don't come up very often, and when they do, they tend to fetch high prices. If you were to sell it at auction, there's a chance it could go for even more than the estimate I gave you. But I'll be honest, it's a big decision. This isn't something you just let go of lightly." He stepped back and studied the painting again, nodding in approval. Emily followed his gaze, watching the way the light seemed to change the painting's colors, the way the brushstrokes seemed to shimmer. For the first time since all of this started, she allowed herself to feel a sense of awe. "It's beautiful," she said softly, almost to herself. "I just keep thinking that it's more than just money. It feels like it has its own story, like it's been waiting for someone to find it." The appraiser looked at her, his expression softening. "You're right," he said. "Every piece of art has its own story. But sometimes the best thing you can do for it is to let it be appreciated by more people. If you sell it, it gets into the hands of collectors or museums where it can be enjoyed by others, admired for generations." Emily bit her lip, feeling the weight of his words, but she wasn't ready to make a decision just yet. "What if I just keep it?" she asked. "What if it's mine and I enjoy it?" "What's the harm in that?" The appraiser smiled. "There's no harm in that. If it's something that brings you joy, then that's worth a lot. But I want you to make the choice that feels right for you. You don't need to rush." After leaving the appraiser's shop, Emily felt a strange calmness wash over her. She had expected to feel more pressured, more anxious about what to do with the painting. But somehow talking to the appraiser had helped. There was no urgency to make a decision. She could take her time. That night, she sat in front of the painting again, her fingers lightly tracing the frame. The golden light from the lamp reflected off the canvas, making the scene in the painting come to life once more. She imagined what it would be like if the painting could speak, if it could tell her its story. What had the artist seen when he painted it? What was he trying to capture in that serene landscape? The longer Emily thought about it, the more she realized that the painting had become a part of her life. It wasn't just something she had found by chance. It felt like a sign, a reminder that life wasn't always predictable. Sometimes it was the unexpected moments, the small decisions that led to something greater. She had been teaching for years, and while she loved her job, she had never been one to chase after fame or fortune. The painting felt like a reminder that beauty and value could be hidden in the most unlikely places. Maybe this was just another chapter in her life, one that would eventually lead her to something else. But for now, she wasn't ready to let go of the painting. It wasn't about the money. It was about the mystery, the sense of wonder that came with it. Emily had always been a practical person, someone who valued security and stability. But in this moment, she realized that the painting had opened up something in her, a feeling of possibility, of adventure, that she hadn't felt in a long time. She made a decision. She would keep the painting, at least for now. There was no rush. And whatever happened next, she would take it one step at a time. Weeks passed and Emily couldn't stop thinking about the painting. It had been a constant presence in her life, not just as a piece of art, but as a symbol of something more, a reminder that there was magic in the unexpected, that life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. She had taken the appraiser's advice to heart, and while she still hadn't made a final decision about selling the painting, she had grown more comfortable with the idea of just having it in her home. It had found a place in her living room, just above the fireplace where it caught the light every morning. Its soft, muted colors brought a quiet peace to the space, and each time Emily looked at it, she felt a sense of connection. Not just to the painting itself, but to something deeper. The thought of it being part of history, of having been created by someone with their own life, struggles and dreams, made it feel more precious. But as much as Emily cherished the painting, she also couldn't ignore the growing curiosity about its past. Every day she felt as though it was calling to her, asking her to learn more. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important she was missing, something that could reveal the true value of the painting, both in terms of money and meaning. She knew that if she didn't explore it further, she would always wonder what could have been. One afternoon, Emily sat down at her kitchen table with her laptop, determined to dig deeper into Joseph Whiting's life and work. She had already done some initial research, but it felt like there was more to uncover. She started by searching for any interviews or articles about Whiting, hoping to find more details about his personal life, his motivations, and perhaps even a clue that would explain why his works were so elusive and rare. Hours passed as she pored over websites and scanned old newspaper articles, trying to piece together a more complete picture of the artist. She found that Whiting had lived a quiet life, traveling around the northeastern United States, capturing the beauty of the landscape in his paintings. He had never achieved widespread fame, but his work had been admired by a small group of collectors and critics. He was known for his soft color palettes and the way he could make a simple scene of trees or water seem like a glimpse into another world. But there was little else. Whiting's life seemed to be shrouded in mystery, almost as if he had intentionally kept himself out of the spotlight. It was frustrating. Emily felt like she was so close to understanding the significance of the painting, yet the answer seemed just out of reach. But then, as she clicked through an online forum dedicated to collectors of 19th-century American art, she stumbled across something unexpected, a mention of Whiting in a thread titled, "Lost Works of Joseph Whiting." The post was written by a man who claimed to have seen a collection of Whiting's paintings at a private estate in Vermont, where the artist had reportedly spent a few years of his life. According to the post, the collection had been sold off after the estate owner's death, but no one knew where the paintings had gone. This was the lead she had been waiting for. Emily copied the link and sent it to Laura, hoping she could help track down more information. Laura had always been good at finding things, and Emily figured that if anyone could help, it would be her. Within minutes, Laura responded, "This is fascinating. I've heard rumors about Whiting's works being hidden away in private collections, but nothing concrete. I think I might know someone who can help. Let me reach out and see if we can track this down. I'll let you know what I find." Emily's heart raced as she closed her laptop. This felt like the breakthrough she had been waiting for. For the first time in a while, she allowed herself to feel hopeful again. Maybe, just maybe, the painting she had found wasn't just a random discovery. It could be part of a larger story, one that was waiting to be uncovered. The next few days felt like a blur. Emily tried to go about her normal routine, but her mind kept returning to the painting, to the mystery she was now so deeply entangled in. She had already started to imagine what it would be like to meet the people who had owned Whiting's paintings before they disappeared, to learn about the history of those works and their significance. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the connection, the idea that something so small and seemingly insignificant had the potential to unlock a whole world of stories and history. Then, one evening, she received an unexpected phone call from Laura. "Emily," Laura said breathlessly, "I think I found something. I've been talking to a collector who specializes in 19th-century American art, and he told me about a collection of Whiting's work that was sold about 20 years ago. They were sold in a private auction, But there was one piece in particular that was said to have been the crown jewel of the collection. It was a landscape, very similar to the one you have. The auction house had no idea where it went after that, but I think it's possible that your painting might be it. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Are you saying that it's the same painting? I don't know for sure, Laura replied, but I think it's worth investigating. The auction house might still have records of the sale. If we can track down the buyer, we might be able to learn more about its provenance, its history, who owned it, and why it's been so hard to find. Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The chance to learn more about the painting's true history. But at the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into unknown territory, a world where the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. She wasn't just a casual art lover anymore. She was on the trail of something that could change her life forever. Over the next week, Laura continued her research, contacting the auction house and gathering as much information as she could. Emily, for her part, started to feel like she was living in a different world altogether. It was exciting, but it was also exhausting. There were moments when she found herself questioning whether it was all worth it. What if she was just chasing a dream? What if the painting wasn't anything special after all? But each time she doubted herself, she would look at the painting again, sitting quietly in her living room, its soft colors glowing in the light. She realized that it wasn't just the potential value that made it special. It was the journey, the discovery, the idea that something so ordinary could be extraordinary. That was what mattered to her now. Then one afternoon, she received a call from Laura that changed everything. I think we found it, Laura said, her voice full of excitement. The painting you have. It was part of the collection from the auction I told you about. We've tracked it back to a private collection in New York City. The owner passed away a few years ago, and the collection was dispersed after that. The painting you have was one of the last to be sold, and it went for a significant amount. It was valued at over $50,000. Emily's mind was spinning. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The painting was worth more than she had ever imagined. But as the words sank in, a new thought crossed her mind. What was she supposed to do with it now? Emily sat in her living room, staring at the painting, her mind spinning. The phone call from Laura had left her breathless, almost too overwhelmed to process everything. The painting, the one she had found by chance in a second-hand store, was worth more than $50,000. It had been part of a private collection, sold after the death of its owner, and had somehow found its way into her hands. At first, the excitement had hit her like a wave. She had dreamed of finding something valuable one day, but this felt like a dream she couldn't wake up from. She thought about the money, about what it could do for her. Pay off bills, take a vacation, maybe even quit her job and start fresh. The possibilities were endless, but as quickly as the excitement came, it faded, replaced by a deep uncertainty. What did she really want to do with the painting? Was it just about the money, or was there something more to it? She had spent so much time focusing on its value that she had forgotten the very reason she had bought it in the first place. It had been a simple, almost impulsive decision. The painting had caught her eye, and she had felt a strange connection to it. It wasn't the price that mattered at the moment. It was the story, the mystery, the feeling of owning something with history, even if it was a history she didn't fully understand yet. The idea of selling it felt like giving up a piece of that connection. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Her mind kept running through all the possibilities, all the things she could do with the money. She could pay off her student loans, take a trip to Europe, maybe even buy a new house. The idea of a life without financial stress was tempting. She thought about the pressure of everyday life, the bills, the constant juggling of work and responsibilities. The money could be a way out, a chance to live without the constant worry of how to make ends meet. But then she thought about the painting again. She thought about how it had made her feel when she first laid eyes on it, how it had brought a sense of calm and wonder into her home. The idea of selling it felt like losing that sense of magic, like giving away something that had become a part of her. The next day, she met with Laura again to discuss the next steps. Laura had been busy tracking down more information about the painting's past, and she was eager to share what she had learned. Emily sat down at the small cafe where they had agreed to meet, a cup of coffee in front of her, but she wasn't sure if she could even drink it. She was too lost in her thoughts. I think we've got all the information we need, Laura said, pulling out her phone to show Emily a few pictures and documents. The auction house still has records of the sale. and it turns out the painting was purchased by a collector in New York City. His name was Charles Montgomery, a well-known art collector who passed away a few years ago. His collection was sold off, but no one knows exactly where this painting ended up after that. Emily listened carefully, absorbing every detail. It was strange to think about the painting being part of someone else's collection, about it traveling through different hands before it ended up in hers. There was something surreal about it all. So what now? Emily asked. Should I try to track down the painting's current owner? Is that even possible? Laura shrugged. It's possible, but it might take some time. And even if you find the owner, they may not be interested in selling it back to you. Or maybe they'll want to sell it at auction, which could get you even more money. It's really up to you. Emily sat back, feeling torn. The money was tempting, but something inside her told her that there was more to this story than just the price tag. The painting had become part of her life, part of her story. She wasn't sure if she was ready to let it go. For the next few weeks, Emily tried to put the decision out of her mind. She focused on her work, spending time with friends and trying to live her life as normally as possible. But every time she passed the painting in her living room, she felt that familiar pull, that sense of connection. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that it wasn't just about the money. It was about the journey, about the story behind the painting and about what it had come to mean to her. One evening after dinner, Emily sat down with her phone to do some more research. She searched for information about Charles Montgomery, hoping to learn more about the man who had once owned the painting. The more she dug, the more she learned about Montgomery's love for art and his passion for collecting. He had built an impressive collection over the years, but there was something about his interest in American artists like Joseph Whiting that seemed especially personal. Emily began to wonder if Montgomery had seen something in Whiting's work that had resonated with him, just as it had with her. As she continued to read, she found an article about Montgomery's estate sale, which mentioned several paintings from his collection, including the Whiting piece. The article described how Montgomery had carefully curated his collection, seeking out works that had meaning beyond their financial value. It made Emily realize that the painting wasn't just a random find. It was part of a larger story, one that connected her to a long line of people who had appreciated the same beauty, the same magic that had drawn her to it in the first place. The next morning, Emily made a decision. She wouldn't sell the painting. Not yet, at least. The painting had become more than just an object. It had become a symbol of something important in her life. She realized that she didn't need to rush into any decision. The painting could stay with her, a reminder of the unexpected turns life could take. She didn't know where the journey would lead, but she was no longer worried about the money or what others thought. It wasn't about the financial value anymore. It was about holding on to something that had meaning, something that felt special in a world that often felt too busy and too loud. Emily decided to keep the painting, not because it was worth a lot of money, but because it had become part of her story, part of her journey. She felt a sense of peace as she made the decision. She would treasure the painting not just for what it was, but for the way it had made her feel, for the way it had reminded her that life was full of surprises, full of moments that could change everything in an instant. As time passed, Emily continued to live her life with the painting in her home, a quiet presence in the background of her everyday life. She didn't feel the need to chase after the past or seek out the painting's future. Instead, she focused on the present, appreciating the simple beauty of the painting and the story it had become a part of. And though she never stopped wondering about the painting's past, she learned to be content with the mystery. The painting was hers now, and that was enough. She had found something precious not in its monetary value, but in the way it had touched her life, in the way it had reminded her that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't the ones that are hidden away, but the ones that find their way to us when we least expect it.